The fracking loophole that made billions and poisoned a nation. Intro. For generations, this was the source of life. Water from the ground, clean, pure, and trusted. You drank it, you cooked with it, you bathed your children in it. You never thought twice. Then the drilling rigs arrived. They dotted the landscape, promising jobs and a new era of energy independence. But soon after, something started to change in the water. And not long after that, the nosebleeds started. Then came the rashes, the headaches that just wouldn't go away. They told everyone it was safe. But when people asked what was in the fluid being injected into the earth beneath their homes, the answer was silence. It was a secret. And that's when they knew something was terribly, terribly wrong. Hook. This isn't just one family's story, it's the story of countless communities across the nation. It's the story of how one of the world's most powerful industries, with a helping hand from the highest levels of government, carved out a legal loophole big enough to drive a drilling rig through. A loophole that allowed them to pump millions of pounds of hazardous chemicals into the ground, threatening the water supply for millions of Americans, all while hiding the truth behind a wall of trade secrets. This is the story of the Halliburton loophole, a corporate coup that made billions while communities paid the price. Section 1. An energy revolution, a hidden cost. The story of Halliburton begins not with a revolution but with a simple, powerful idea. In 1919, a man named Earl P. Halliburton started the New Method Oil Well Cementing Company with little more than a borrowed wagon and a team of mules. His goal was to make oil drilling safer. Halliburton developed and patented a new method of cementing wells, a process designed to seal the well from its surroundings, to protect the casing, and crucially, to prevent oil and gas from leaking out and contaminating groundwater. His entire business was built on well integrity. Decades later, in the early 2000s, that same company would be at the heart of a very different kind of energy revolution. The technology was hydraulic fracturing, or fracking. The idea seemed simple enough. Blast a high-pressure mix of water, sand and chemicals deep into the earth to shatter rock and release the natural gas trapped inside. It worked. It unlocked massive new reserves, and suddenly, the US was on track to become the world's leading oil and gas producer. A key player in this revolution was Halliburton, the oilfield services giant. The company didn't just join the boom, it had acquired the license for the original fracking process decades earlier and was now perfecting the chemical cocktails that made it all possible. But as the rigs went up, so did the reports of strange illnesses and poisoned water. From Texas to Pennsylvania to Colorado, a disturbing pattern was emerging. Families near fracking sites shared terrifying stories of well water that was cloudy, foul-smelling, and sometimes so full of methane it could be lit on fire right at the tap. They also reported clusters of frightening health issues, breathing problems, neurological symptoms, and severe skin conditions. Doctors and scientists started asking the one question that mattered: what exactly is in that fracking fluid? The industry's answer was a deafening silence. The chemical recipes were proprietary trade secrets. This secrecy made it nearly impossible for doctors to treat their patients or for scientists to connect the dots between the drilling and the sickness. How can you prove what's poisoning you if the company responsible refuses to say what's using? The answer to how this was even legal wasn't buried underground. It was waiting in the halls of power in Washington, D.C. Section 2. The architects of the loophole. To understand how a company could legally inject hazardous materials near drinking water sources without any federal oversight, you have to rewind to the year 2000. The CEO of Halliburton was a man you've probably heard of, Dick Cheney. Just a year later, he became the Vice President of the United States. As Vice President, Cheney led a special energy task force to reshape the country's energy policy. At the time, concerns about fracking were already growing, and a 1997 court ruling even suggested it should be regulated under the Safe Drinking Water Act. But Cheney's task force pushed for the exact opposite. It recommended that Congress should exempt hydraulic fracturing from federal oversight. That recommendation became the blueprint for a provision buried deep inside the massive Energy Policy Act of 2005. now known as the Halliburton Loophole. This clause officially exempted fracking fluids from the Safe Drinking Water Act, the landmark 1974 law that sets legally enforceable standards for our nation's drinking water. And just like that, with the stroke of a pen, the oil and gas industry became the only industry in America allowed to inject known hazardous chemicals directly into or near underground sources of drinking water with no federal oversight. The fox wasn't just guarding the henhouse. It had rewritten the law to say that what it was doing wasn't a crime. Around the same time, a 2004 EPA study was published concluding that fracking posed little or no threat to drinking water. That conclusion was later called unsupportable by an EPA whistleblower, who alleged the politically connected industry had its thumb on the scale and that members of the review panel had conflicts of interest. Section 3. A poisoned cocktail. So, what exactly did the Halliburton loophole unleash? What are these chemicals that companies have fought so hard to keep secret? Thanks to the tireless work of researchers and limited state-level disclosures, we now have a partial picture, and it's horrifying. A 2023 study found that between 2014 and 2021, fracking companies injected over 282 million pounds of chemicals that are regulated as hazardous under the very same Safe Drinking Water Act they are exempt from. Let's be clear about what these are. The list includes things like benzene, a known human carcinogen linked to leukemia, acrylamide and formaldehyde, which are linked to cancer and nerve damage, and over 250 million pounds of ethylene glycol, a chemical known to damage the kidneys, nerves, and respiratory system. And this is only what was disclosed. During that same time, the industry hid the identity of countless other chemicals under the trade secret label. More recently, reports from organizations like Physicians for Social Responsibility have uncovered evidence that companies, including ExxonMobil and Chevron, have used toxic PFAS, so-called forever chemicals that build up in the human body, in over 5,200 wells. The health impacts are no longer theoretical. Peer-reviewed studies have now linked living near fracking sites to higher risks of asthma, heart problems, low birth weights, and birth defects. For the millions of Americans living within a mile of a well, this isn't a political debate, it's a daily reality. Section 4. A system of secrecy and intimidation. The industry's main defense against public outcry has been a voluntary disclosure database called FracFocus. But researchers and activists have called it a black hole of information. It gives the illusion of transparency while allowing companies to hide untold amounts of chemicals as trade secrets. This creates an impossible David and Goliath fight for families who get sick. You have to prove that your contaminated well or your child's illness was caused by a specific chemical, a chemical the company won't even admit to using. It's a system built for plausible deniability where the burden of proof is deliberately shifted onto the victims, not the polluters. And this fight isn't just about water. Fracking operations also release a cocktail of airborne pollutants, including volatile organic compounds like benzene, which have been linked to cancer and respiratory illness in nearby residents. One Harvard study found that people over 65 living near or downwind from fracking sites have a higher risk of premature death. While companies like Halliburton now talk about investing in emissions reduction, the sheer scale of their operations continues to place a heavy burden on our environment and our health. Conclusion: the fight for justice. The story of the Halliburton loophole is a brutal lesson in what happens when corporate power goes unchecked. It shows how political influence can be weaponized to dismantle decades of environmental protection for private profit, leaving ordinary people to pay with their health, their property, and their peace of mind. A legal loophole, lobbied for by a powerful company whose former CEO was in the second highest office in the land, has unleashed a toxic legacy that will last for generations. It has created sacrifice zones across America, where the right to clean water and clean air is treated as less important than the race for energy. But this story isn't over. In communities across the country, people are fighting back. They are demanding accountability, organizing for stronger state regulations, and pushing for federal action. A bill called the FAR Act has been introduced in Congress multiple times to finally close the Halliburton loophole and demand the disclosure of all fracking chemicals, but so far it has failed to pass. The fight for justice continues in courtrooms, in town halls, and in the work of scientists and journalists exposing the truth. When you see a glass of murky water, it's a reminder of what's at stake. This isn't just about a flawed law. It's about the fundamental right of every single person to know what's being put into their air and their water, and the right to be protected from harm. The battle against powerful corporate interests is long and difficult, but shining a light on the truth is the first critical step. If you believe that no company should be above the law, share this video. The more people who understand the real story of the Halliburton loophole, the louder the call for change will become. You can also support organizations like Earthworks, Physicians for Social Responsibility, and the Frack Tracker Alliance. They are on the front lines of this fight for environmental justice. Our health and the safety of our water depend on it.